Yeah, HQ, welcome aboard with Ryan Wilson. I'm Eric Casilius. And, you know, Steve Young, when he played in his first Super Bowl, I've heard him say, when I woke up that morning, I knew no matter what, when I went to bed that night, no matter what, my life was going to be radically different, meaning I was either going to win or lose or have to answer or something crazy was going to happen. That's just one of those days. Well, today, one of those days in the NFL, it would be radically different tonight than it was when you woke up. So how did it go down from Tampa? Let's take a look. Oh, yeah, Chiefs, Bucs, Raymond James, Super Bowl 55 on CBS. Bucs, first team to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium, yet they chose the road whites. Brady looking for his 7th ring. Patrick Mahomes looking to become the youngest quarterback to win 2 Super Bowls, just 25 years old. Under a minute left in the first quarter, Bucs down 3-0. Brady, Gronk, flat, touchdown. Bucs up 7-3. Gronk spike. 13th time they've hooked up in the playoffs. That's the best connection all time in terms of touchdowns. Brady's first quarter touchdown pass in 78 Super Bowl attempts. You could just see that it was not really their day. Steve Spagnuolo's D was penalty troubled. Honey Badger's pick, that came back. Look at this. I don't know who's catching that ball, but they threw a flag there. That's interference in the end zone. I didn't know Mike Evans was the all-time greatest jumper in history, but whatever. And then right before the half, Antonio Brown for the TD. First half under hits comfortably. Bucs up 21-6. And Honey Badger getting a penalty there for taunting. Brady's like, oh, yeah? Come see my rings. I got 7 of them when this thing's over. Brady in the first half, by the way, 16-20, Buck 43 touchdowns. First possession of the second half. Leonard part 6. In the end zone for 6. Bucs up 28-9. That's a dagger. 7 touchdowns last 7 games for Leonard Fournette. Just wasn't Kansas City's night, as we mentioned. Looking for Tyreek Hill. Swatted, picked. Oof. Now, Kansas City's receivers took more than 1 or 2 balls off the face, hands, grill, chest, whatever. Mahomes 0 of 7 on 3rd down at that point. Even when the effort were there, the results weren't. Patrick Mahomes is running for his life behind a makeshift offensive line on 4th down. Look at this. Heaves it and somehow hits a guy, as I mentioned, in the face. In the face. Yeah. Tom Brady says, whatever, man. I got 7 now. Bucs, 2nd Super Bowl in their franchise history. The other in 2002. So Tom Brady, more Super Bowl championships than any other franchise. Wow. He becomes the 2nd quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl. 2 different teams. Peyton Manning did it, of course. Colts and Broncos. Bruce Arians, the oldest head coach in NFL history to win a Super Bowl at 68. And for the Chiefs, they had a chance to repeat for the first time anybody would repeat since 03-04, but they can't do it. Patrick Mahomes, 6-0 in the playoffs against anybody whose last name isn't Brady. And the first time that Mahomes has lost by more than 1 possession since Texas Tech lost to Iowa State in 2016. Bucs went on the money line, plus 140. Bucs went on the spread, obviously. They were getting 3. The under hits, because it's hard to get into the 50s when one team doesn't even get to double digits. I keep saying it because it's comical, right? The Patriots, 6 Super Bowl. Steelers, 6. Cowboys, 5. 49ers, 5. Brady, 7. This thing is now 55 years old, right? And he's won 7 of them. He basically has won 12.5% of the Super Bowls, and it started before he was born. Well done, TB12. All right, everybody in on this one. Let's take a look there. We have Danny Cannell, Pete Prisco. They're out in Tampa. Let's start generally, guys, and I'll start with you, Danny. Give me a grade for this Super Bowl. I mean, there was some history here. It wasn't a particularly close game. Some stuff in the first half. COVID fans, all that. Give me a grade for this Super Bowl.
I mean, the fact that you just mentioned COVID being here, I think you have to give it an A+. Just the fact that the NFL was able to pull off the season on schedule. Every single team played 16 games. You got to this. There was plans to possibly move the Super Bowl back. From that standpoint, I give it an A+. From the game itself, fans want to see points. They want to see great quarterback play from both quarterbacks. They want to see teams play at full strength. Kansas City, clearly, with the offensive lines issues we documented all the last couple weeks leading up to this, was not at full strength. So from that standpoint, I give the game itself about a C grade. You know, it was okay. It was entertaining. The first half was kind of close. The second half was more of a dud. But A+ for pulling this thing off on time.
Yeah, I give the league an A+ for pulling it off. But you're a good grader. I give him a D. This game was awful. This game was awful. The quarterbacking wasn't great. Brady was good. Where were the passing yards? I thought it would be 35-30, tons of passing yards. They couldn't get it going. The officiating slowed down the game. I thought that the Chiefs' plan was bad. They weren't patient enough. Should have gotten to the middle of the field to Kelsey more early in the game. And Andy Reid calling timeouts at the end of the half to give Tampa Bay an opportunity to go get even more points when you knew you were getting the ball coming out of half with a chance to maybe make it 14-14. I didn't like that strategy at all. So all in all, D for this Super Bowl.
Here's what it is. Danny Cannell grades like a gym teacher, and Pete grades like he's teaching trigonometry in Sanskrit, all right? So there's got to be some kind of happy medium here. Was this a good Super Bowl, all things considered? You got a guy now who has more Super Bowls than any franchise. It wasn't close. CBS obviously did a great job with the coverage. And fans kind of in the stands. They did pull it off. Controversy, kind of bad officiating, let's say it. What do you give the game in terms of a grade?
Well, I'll start by saying this. Tom Brady, that storyline makes it riveting and certainly worth watching. If we told you at the beginning of the season that Tom Brady's going to take the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl, that's something you're going to watch. But in terms of the gameplay, I think Danny and Pete are right. It was not very exciting. It was pretty clear early on that the Chiefs did not show up to play. I give it a C just to split the difference there. I do agree that the fact that the NFL was able to pull this off in the middle of a pandemic, or hopefully at the end of a pandemic, is certainly noteworthy. But the football action didn't blow your hair back, as it were.
All right. So I got the gym teacher, the trig teacher in Sanskrit, and you're like the guidance counselor, making everybody feel good and happy, splitting it right down the middle. You're a nice man. There it is. All right. How about back to you guys in terms of Tom Brady? How did he get this done? Like, how did this happen? How did he go to Tampa and take a team that had ability, but, I mean, they weren't supposed to be winning the Super Bowl? I mean, what just happened, I guess, is the way I'd say it, Pete.
Well, I think what happened was this is a guy who puts in every bit of hard work you could put into becoming a great player, and I think that bled over. This was a young team. You look around, there's a lot of young players on this team. They needed that player guidance, and I think seeing what he does, seeing how he works, kind of elevated their play, and they also made some good moves. Let's be real. I don't know if they win this game without Tristan Wirfs playing right tackle. The guy's phenomenal. He's a Pro Bowler, All-Pro in his first year, and he should be. He's a dominant right tackle. They dominated up front. So they had Antonio Brown, touchdown. They had Gronk, 2 touchdowns. They had Leonard Fournette, ran wild tonight. I mean, they made, Jason Light, the general manager, deserves some credit as well. They made a ton of good moves.
He does, but they don't win this Super Bowl without Tom Brady. And it was interesting because I saw a stat of all the Tampa Bay Bucs records over the past 10 years, and it's, a litany of, 6-10 and 7-9, and then a 4-12 mixed in there, and it's bad. And then all of a sudden it says, sign Tom Brady, win Super Bowl. And that's when it kind of hits you. It's like, oh, you don't win a Super Bowl by yourself, but the leadership that he brings in there and the work ethic, coaches can try to preach it till they're blue in the face. Hey, we have to do this. We have to do the little things. And they do. Every coach in the NFL tells their team that you have to do these things, but not many teams have a franchise quarterback that comes in and puts in the work and demonstrates from their level. So, okay, you got to follow me. This is how you win Super Bowls. Instant credibility when he came in there. So every player said, oh, this is a little bit different than we've ever seen before. They followed him and never looked back. And it was a long process, right? I mean, there were times this season where didn't look great on the offensive side of the ball, but instead of panicking, instead of saying, oh, well, what are we going to do about quarterback in the offseason, which has been a question for the Bucs the past few years, it's, we're going to be fine. We'll figure it out. This is a process. And there it was. The process played out and it worked to perfection.
It's almost like the old Scooby-Doo cartoon. You know, you got the mystery machine. You come out, no matter what you pull off, it's Tom Brady there.
That's right.
It's done. I mean, the guy was terrific. how did this happen? I mean, this was not the best team in the regular season. They were not the favorites coming into the playoffs. They didn't dominate. They beat 38-3 by the Saints. They got swept by the Saints. They didn't even win their division. Were they the best team this year?
Yeah, they were. And it's funny you mentioned that, EK, because they did start slow. And we go back to that Week 12 game where they were down early to the Chiefs in Tampa Bay. From Week 13 on to the point that we are right now, advanced metrics will tell you that the Buccaneers offense actually outplayed the Chiefs offense over that same stretch. And I think we haven't even talked about it yet, what Todd Bowles and that defense was able to do tonight to that offense. And an offense obviously hobbled by the lack of playmakers, a lack of offensive linemen. That still takes nothing away from how dominating this defense was. Coming into this game, the Chiefs were absolutely unstoppable on third down. They were first in efficiency. They were 3 for 13 in the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers defense typically starts slow, and they ramp up to being really good by the fourth quarter. They were good from Jump Street, and that, to me, has a lot to do with the success. Obviously, Tom Brady played a big part in that, but guys like Devin White, guys like Antoine Winfield, both who had interceptions, both young playmakers, had a lot to do with that success on defense.
Devin White is a football-playing Jesse. I mean, that guy is just getting it done. And that leads me right nicely into sort of where we are, right? We just start with, look, it's Brady, it's the Bucs, they win. But what's your underrated storyline? Is it a player? Is it a coach? Is it a unit? Was it the officiating? Is it the fact they played at home? Brady will be the headline. What's the underrated storyline from this game, Ryan?
I think the underrated story isn't the offensive line for the Chiefs. We knew coming in that they were going to be down a bunch of players due to injury. The underrated storyline for me is that Patrick Mahomes, he actually played really well, considering he had a bum toe that he injured 3 weeks ago. He perhaps may even have surgery on it. And he was able to make plays in the pocket, or at least give his players down the field, put them in position to make plays. They didn't catch a lot of passes, despite running for his life from the first snap until the very last snap. He took hit after hit, more hits than we've seen him take in a long time. At one point, midway through the fourth quarter, he had been rushed or hurried on 24 of 40 dropbacks. That doesn't typically happen in an Andy Reid offense with something resembling a fully healthy offensive line. I think he played, and you'll hear this, that he played terribly. He didn't play terribly. He played as well as anyone could play under the circumstances and did things that put his team in position to be in the mix. Although his teammates downfield, I think, would agree, they would agree if you asked them. They let him down time and again.
All right, Tom Brady is the MVP. It's official. It's announced. Pete, where would this, or where should this rank for Brady in his 7? This one. First one without Belichick. Latest one. Not the greatest comeback or any of that stuff. He is the MVP. Where does this rank on his 7 to you?
Well, I think in terms of performance, it's not one of the better ones. It's more like the first one. Remember, he wasn't great in that game either. That was won by the defense when they beat the Rams. And a lot like this, they slowed them down. That was New England, but they played a lot like this. They slowed down an explosive passing game. But this ranks maybe near the top for one reason. He just showed everybody. It was me. It wasn't Bill Belichick. It was me. He's the reason they won those titles. Look, Belichick's the greatest coach of all time, and Brady just served notice to everybody out there. Coach is important, but he's not as important as the quarterback.
I agree. The only thing I would disagree with, I thought he played great. I don't think they needed him to do anything in the second half. They started running the football. They started getting Ronald Jones involved and Leonard Fournette, and it was basically became clock management. Let's just milk the clock as much as we can. We don't want to take unnecessary risks, and so they just kept pounding away the clock, and that's exactly what they did. First half, though, just knowing when to take those shots, when Andy Reid was calling those timeouts. I know the penalties were controversial. They weren't great calls. They were uncharacteristic of what we've seen from the NFL. You mentioned getting the best of Bill Belichick. How much did we hear this week, or the last 2 weeks, or the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes is the next he's going to take the torch from Tom Brady. I've said that on our air, but I didn't feel comfortable with saying he's the next GOAT, right? Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's where this one means a lot to Tom Brady, because he kind of told everybody, let's slow down with that a little bit. I'm still the guy that he's got to knock off. And in order to be the best, you have to beat the best, and you haven't done that in the biggest stage.
Danny, am I crazy that I want to see it all play out before I definitively say that in this divorce, Belichick has lost and Brady has won? I mean, they had, 8 starters opt out of coaching? But they're not both retiring right now. I suppose, obviously right now Brady's ahead, and this is a big deal, but there's still, I don't know if that book is completely written right now, but Brady does win the MVP, 5th time. That's the most ever. Nobody else even has 4 in terms of Super Bowl MVPs. What's the underrated storyline? We were talking about that before Brady got announced MVP. The underrated storyline to you is what, Danny?
So first of all, I would say I'm with Pete on the Bill Belichick versus Tom Brady debate. I would always side with the guys that are actually playing on the field, and Tom Brady was the one making the throws. He was the one that was making the checks at the line of scrimmage. He's the one leading by example in the locker room. So I would give the advantage to him on that one. I think Ryan alluded to it earlier. The underrated story in this game is the job that Todd Bowles did on the defensive side of the ball with the adjustments that he made to slow down this attack. And yes, they were depleted on the offensive line, but Tyreek Hill got a lot of yards late. He was basically absent throughout most of the game and then had some late yardage. Travis Kelce didn't get started until later, and all those passes, most of them were underneath or kind of in scramble yards. He didn't burn them down the field. They shut down the run game. They were harassing Patrick Mahomes constantly. I would disagree with Ryan that Patrick Mahomes, had this kind of heroic performance, kept him in the game. I thought he looked rattled, as bad as I've seen him in his entire career. Now, I understand the circumstances, and he was tough as nails, and he was doing everything he could to bring them back in the game, which I commend him for.
May I jump in and just press the point? My job is to just flush it out. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. But how many times did Patrick Mahomes, running for his life, pirouetting horizontal to the ground, flipping it underhanded 40 yards, and hit a guy off the face in the end zone or the hands, and they dropped it? I mean, did Patrick Mahomes, you're saying he didn't play well tonight?
No, and you can crown him the greatest incomplete passer of all time if you want. They were incompletes. That's all they were.
You can't catch it, too.
And it's not really about, but it's not even that. If you watch him from the first quarter, when the protection was there. And this is probably a combination of not only Patrick Mahomes, but the offensive game plan that Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy put together. It did not look like the Kansas City offense that we were used to seeing. I thought they were trying to get a little bit too cute. They were trying some, little double screens, fake one way and come back the other. I just thought the Kansas City Chiefs looked completely out of rhythm. And it's a combination of what Todd Bowles was doing, but I also never felt like Patrick Mahomes was comfortable. Could it have been turf toe? Probably. Could it have been an offensive line that was struggling tremendously? Probably. I mean, and he's been hearing about it for 2 weeks. Oh, your offensive line is hurt. It's a backup. So he was probably, and it looked to me like he was anticipating some pressure and was a little bit antsy. He just was not comfortable. Again, he's a competitor. He's going to be back. Maybe he's the greatest of all time. I did not think it was a great game from him in the first half. Second half is kind of a wash. He's trying to make heroic plays. I did not think it was a good performance for Patrick Mahomes.
I don't either. I think he was sped up the entire game from the word get-go. As soon as he got outside the pocket and made those runs, I said, oh no, he's sped up. He's already going too fast. This isn't who he is. I mean, he's got a turf toe, and he ran for, 25 yards on 2 runs early in the game. That shouldn't happen. And so I think he was sped up. And when you're going faster, this as a quarterback, you're not who you are. And then he wasn't patient enough against the zone. Todd Bowles was great. But ultimately this game, as it usually does, Danny, came down to blocking and tackling, blocking and tackling. The offensive line for Tampa Bay blocked. The offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs didn't block anybody. There was one play where every single guy got beat. Every single one. They were awful tonight, and that was the difference in the game.
Yeah, see, that's sort of, I guess, how I would see it, Ryan. There's a saying in my family, if you're on a date and you open up a bottle of wine, there's a roaring fire, and you got Barry White on the stereo, and you lean in for, a nice hug, and you get the Heisman, it ain't Barry White's fault. You know what I mean? He's done his part. I feel like Patrick Mahomes was Barry White tonight. He did his part. Everything else, there was some other reason. How do you grade Patrick Mahomes' performance today?
Man, Danny and Pete, they are tough. They're willing to give the Super Bowl a much better grade than Patrick Mahomes, it sounds like. I'm giving Patrick Mahomes a B. Did he play perfectly? Of course not. The toe was an issue. Danny and Pete talked about the offensive line woes, and that was obvious from Jump Street. But if Tyreek Hill catches that touchdown that hit him in the face in the first quarter, if Kelsey doesn't drop that pass that hits him in the hands for a first down to keep the drive alive in the first quarter, if whoever the other receiver was in the end zone as Patrick Mahomes is falling down, if he doesn't drop the ball that hits him in the hands, we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes struggling, Patrick Mahomes limping around. We're talking about how the Chiefs were able to keep this game close, and that's where I'm at on Patrick Mahomes. Did he play his best game? No, he clearly did not. But given what he had to work with, which was a bad foot and no offensive line, he put his team in position to keep this game close, and his teammates let him down. We saw it time and time again, and I think that if one of those plays had gone the other way, we haven't even brought up the penalties, which tells you how little that had to do with the outcome of this game. It had more to do with the Chiefs not making plays when they were given the opportunity, and Patrick Mahomes gave them those opportunities, and they literally dropped them.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.